people levied for the same thing. In other clients that I know, it is the government that goes out to fight this thing. And I believe that if our constitution guarantees us that our government is supposed to ensure the protection of our lives, our properties, our assets, then why should I be paying it like I'm paying for a service that is supposed to be rendered to me as a taxpayer, as a citizen of my country? So we find it very, very disheartening. And I know that our labor centers have written, the TUC has written, NLC has also written. But we need to deep dive into the entire thing. Now, a few days about, I think it was yesterday, that the National Assembly came out and told the CBN to stop. Yet again, that brings another question to mind. Can the CBN just come on the air and ask an institution to stop something that has already been passed into law without going back to that same law to amend it, to remove it, or to change whatever it is? So a lot of confusion is being created. Now, since yesterday, when that order was passed by the National Assembly, the CBN has not sent out
any memo.
Circular.
Yeah.
Yes, reversing it. And in the circular saying that banks should start collecting that money, there are penalties involved. The same National Assembly that we know from experience will come out in another 3 years and suddenly remember, like in 2024, you were supposed to do this, you didn't do, and then start the issue of penalties again. So the same confusion that we had when we kept getting court judgments, government directives, and so on, and the supervisory bodies were not acting appropriately, is the same kind of confusion that we're getting into now. First, there was a controversy of whether it was 0.5% or whether it was
0.005%.
0.005%. That confusion was already created. Now we have a confusion about whether to start or to stop.
So this is a
Although
question.
Thankfully, yes.
To interrupt you, something I think you mentioned that we would like to expatiate on. You said this money is being paid by banks since 2018.
Yes.
So does that mean that where were the banks paying? Were the banks paying from their own coffers, or was it customers?
Yes.
Was it customers?
So the instruction was from the CBN for banks to take 0.5% from the income earned on electronic transactions. So, if you do an electronic transfer, they are probably taxed 5 naira. Banks were supposed to pay 0.5% of 35 naira.
So for the transactions that we do with the bank, and then the bank gets the charges due to it, the bank is now supposed to remove that percentage from the charges it has gotten, and then now pay to, and then pay to. Okay. Now another thing is, were the banks given any details as to how this money is being spent and what is being done with the money, and why it was being collected from 2018 till now? How much improvement in that area, and was there any report, in fact, that was shown to banks to say this is what we have been doing with this money, and it's why we are amending this law to go this way, because perhaps we need more?
Now, if you go into the Act states a myriad of things that are supposed to be done. They're supposed to build a certain cyber security center. They're supposed to develop applications and digital machinery, fight cybercrime, and all the rest of it. I have searched through the internet to see if I can find any information. Perhaps it's something that is being kept private so that cyber criminals will not have access to it. But I think now the government should be able to come out and tell us what has happened between 2018 and now, justify the money that had been collected from banks in the last 5.5 years thereabout. So we do not have any information. Like the Act says, if there's supposed to be a committee, it's supposed to be headed by the National Security Advisor. But like I said earlier on, we keep getting reports every day that cybercrime is on the rise. And I know that a lot of banks take a flag for it. When people are being defrauded, when their bank applications are being hacked, It is the banks that take the fall for it, so they're the ones who continue to refund, who continue to chase the criminals around, running back and forth to the police, which is one expect that this body is supposed to take on clearly. We read many times. I'll give an example of the United States, which interestingly is reported to have the highest cases of cybercrime in the world. But one thing about the United States is that once a cybercrime is reported, it may take years, it may take days. The authorities, usually the FBI, will go after them and will always get them. But I cannot say we've had the same kind of impact that we have had here, that is being reported. I'm not sure we have had that same kind of impact here in Nigeria. And I stand corrected.
All right. A short commercial is underway. We would be embarking on that. But then when we come back, we're also going to understand a few more things. Recently, we saw talks about increasing the VAT from 7.5%, but that's a conversation for another time, maybe. But I would like to get your thoughts on that too. And then you mentioned something about it seems as though the only concern is just to generate revenue. And for many people, they are saying, well, there are many other ways to generate revenue, because people seem to agree with that aspect of what you said, that the concerns just seem to how we make money from the Nigerians who are already paying through their nose at the moment. After the commercial, we'd also look at POS operators, because the focus also went to POS operators. So we'll get into that and also look at the implications of it and possibly what it seeks to accomplish. In the meantime, for our listener, how many of the charges from your financial institution are you aware of? How many of these charges do you know? Hopefully, my guest will also tell us the basic charges that the banks, get from their customers for every service. We'll find out all this and more after the break. On WhatsApp, it is 0809-030-6416. Send in your questions and your thoughts. We'll be back.
The great flex about going
It's been an interesting conversation looking at CBN policies, the cybersecurity levy charge, and my guest has been able to give us insights into what it really was meant for, what it should be, and the fact that it had been existing in 2018, where banks had to be the ones paying. Where it's just recently it was amended to include more monies to be taken from Nigerians who engage in electronic transactions. And well, the question is how much what's the word now? Accountability has been given with regards to what we've been collecting from banks since 2018, and even now that you're collecting this, what do you want to do with it? And very critical is the fact that we have a budget that should provide for this arm to be able to tackle this kind of problem. So what percentage from the budget allocated to security goes to fighting cybercrime, or is that not something that's been looked at? There are plenty of questions around this. Unfortunately, we can only ask the questions that pertain to the banks. Well, as for those that pertain to the government would have to give the answers. My guest has been the National President, Association of Senior Staff of Banks, Insurance and Financial Institutions, Olusoji Oluwole. Mr. Soji, as he says, I can call him. Good morning again, and thank you for staying on the line.
Thank you very much.
All right, before we get on, remember that you can go on Facebook and let us know this. Very simple. Various charges. How many of these charges do you know? Bank charges are, you just get a lot today. 5 naira, 2 naira, 3 naira, in some cases 10 naira. How many of these charges do you know from your institution, from your financial institution, by name? How many of them do you know? Let us know. And I would like to start with my guest. That question. I'd like to start this second half with that question. Mr. Soji, can we get an idea, the charges that customers pay, the basic charges when you operate with a bank account or you do a transaction, whether in the bank or online?
Okay. I think I need to start with a little bit of a correction there.
Okay, please.
Rather you refer to them as transaction charges and not bank charges. And I'll explain why.
All right.
It is not all charges that are bank charges. Because I find out that a lot of people erroneously believe that any debit to their account belongs to the bank. I'll start with the simple ones. Charges on accounts that are accrue to banks, basically today, and every time you do a transaction, are basically a part, and I'm choosing my words carefully, a part of electronic funds transfer. So if you do an electronic funds transfer today, and you are charged, say, 35 naira, your bank only gets a percentage of that money. There are other parties that share that money. The bank shares, your own bank shares, needs gets, and other parties. Then there is what is called the account management fund, which replaced the COT of the old days, which is 0.1% of debit transactions on current accounts, not even on savings accounts. Then we have the card maintenance fee, which is an approved fee, monthly fee. I think that's 100 naira. It's approved by the CBN for banks to collect.
Please, let's pause for the card maintenance. What does the card maintenance fee do?
Now, what the card maintenance fee does is basically to charge for the use of those cards across board, and I will explain that part of it too.
Because people want to know how it maintains the card. When it's called card maintenance,
sometimes maybe the name, maybe the name itself is what may be controversial, but we need to look at the purpose behind it itself. Okay. So yes, there is no card that is being maintained. I agree. Now, the service is being provided. And when I say service is being provided, we say that we have placed certain facilities all around for you to be able to carry out transactions. We have ATMs, we have POSs, and all those things. So basically, that's what it covers. And the reason behind it, if you recall, some years ago, the CBN passed the circular and said that for your first 3 transactions at any ATM that is not yours, you do not pay. Your first 3 transactions are free. The second is that if you use your ATM, the ATM belonging to your bank, irrespective of the number of times, you do not pay. And that is not a problem. But what again the banking public does not know is that every transaction, those first 3 transactions that you carry out on the on other banks' ATMs, your bank actually bears the cost of that transaction on your behalf. That is on one part. The second part of it is that the CBN expects that we have our ATMs running 24 hours a day. None must come down, must provide alternative power, we must provide support, we must provide security and all those things. That is what that fee covers for us, along with other fees that your bank pays for the possession of that card. A lot of people also do not know that banks bear some costs relating to the operations of those cards. They are card service providers. There are a lot of providers around that eco business itself. So that is what that part of it maintains. And I also know that there are certain banks too that come out and say, oh, as part of our own service to you, we would even renew your card for you free, or your first card comes to you free. All those things are there that are taken care of by the bank.
So if a person, go on.
Yeah, and then when we look at other fees, so we have the stamp duty. If you receive funds in your account of 10,000 naira and above, that 15 naira does not belong to the government. It belongs to that does not belong to the bank. It is the stamp duty that is remitted to government. We have VAT, of course. We all know the VAT charges. VAT charges goes to the government itself. The SMS alert. SMS alert is a recovery, so it is not an income to the bank. The bank has already paid for the SMS. The SMS is sent to you, and whatever is charged is just a replacement of that SMS fee. So are the basic ones that one can really.
So give us an idea. So basically, if I'm doing a transaction of 1,000 naira, and some of these charges are included, it technically means the transaction is not 1,000 naira. So it could get to 1,000 what? 1,050 naira, 1,000.
Well, it depends. It depends on the maximum. So let's put it this way: the maximum you are likely to pay is 1,004 naira, and that 1,004 naira is if you have opted to receive SMS alert. So again, the public cannot know this. What the rule says is that it is compulsory that you must get an alert. The customer has a choice to determine whether they want SMS, email, or both. So if it is email
is free.
Yes, email is free. If it is SMS, you pay for it.
All right.
So your 1,000 naira will just be 1,000 naira. So if you go to your ATM, to an ATM to draw 1,000 naira, all you are going to be charged is 1,000 naira. No more, no less.
All right.
Get your 1,000 naira.
So at least I hope the listener has gotten this one. So if you want to dodge that SMS fee, just use email. So it's free. You don't get to pay. And that's how. All right. Thank you for explaining this. But you mentioned something about POS operators. So let's get onto the POS operators. What does it take to get a POS, to operate a POS stand or become a POS operator? The idea is, the reason for the question is because they're now being asked to register. We thought initially the idea in public space was that the banks were trying to see how, we make these transactions easier for people. So we reduce the population, the crowd in the banking hall, and see how people can get easy access to cash. Correct me if I'm wrong, but many I thought this was the idea. So a lot of people would think that before a person gets the POS as it is, it's a property of whichever financial institution it is gotten from. Right or right?
Yes.
So then it means that if I'm coming to get it, I would register, or perhaps the institution would have certain due diligence to do and get certain information before I now operate on their behalf as some sort of, annex or something, for lack of a better word. Yeah. So what is the idea behind the CAC registration for POS operators now?
Well, I want to assume that has come up because of a sudden increase in financial crimes that have been traced to a number of POS operators. When this POS thing started several years ago, it actually started. So what banks were doing was that it was like bringing your bank to your community. So that corner shop near your house, that supermarket around the corner will have a POS that can carry out transactions beyond just payments. So like a cashback thing, so you withdraw cash, you pay your bills, and all the rest. And that had worked effectively. And you'll find out that a lot of those corner shops and supermarkets were actually registered businesses. Either as limited company businesses. So a lot of them already registered with CAC. Now, when that project became successful, we said, well, why not? Why not make it a means of income for individuals? And then the rush out really started. And you'll find, if you go around today, I can bet you that more than half of the POS terminals that you find on the street today are actually from fintechs, which is a good thing. But unfortunately, what we found is that a lot of fraudulent activity have veered towards it. I don't know. I don't know if you have ever received a message from someone whose phone was probably hacked or something, asking you that he needs to do a transfer, he's exceeded his limit, and needs you to help him to do something. You will find that a lot of those messages, if you go on that conversation with them and ask for their account number, they're going to give you the account of a fintech. And if you trace it, you will find out that a lot of them are POS operators. So it seems as if those POS are being given to individuals now and not to businesses that you can track.
But so, isn't there any way the POS? I mean, the thing I'm trying to understand is this POS belong to a fintech that can be tracked. Isn't there definitely a way, or are we saying that is a loophole in the system that was not noticed? Because it's almost unfathomable to think that at this time we had this kind of a fabulous idea and did not properly check to say that, okay, we can trace in case of any fraudulent activity or so, it's possible that we can trace the source through where this particular machine is coming from.
So a gap, I see that a gap has been created. You will recall, I think we had a similar conversation some time ago when we were talking about accounts checking BVN and NIN and all the rest. You recall that conversation?
Yes, of course.
It is something similar. Yeah, it is something similar here. Where you start something and do not begin to think ahead that certain security measures need to be put in place. We have had reports of people being robbed and they are being given POS terminals and asked to transfer the balance on their accounts through a POS. And all of those people, because there is nothing to track them until now, is that they do it, they don't it, and they do another name.
Mr. Soji, most of these POS operators from fintechs especially, the numbers used are usually phone numbers that belong to these people, and those phone numbers would have NIN. And even for the bank account numbers, they have BVN. And then it's also still boggles the mind a little bit when we think that the same issues happen even with banks, where people are defrauded, whether with ATM cards, whether with all of this. And then it still brings us back to the beginning of this conversation, which is the issue with cybersecurity. So with all the data that we collect and all the information we have, all the NIN registration, BVN this, and then people go, before they get this POS, the operators have to also register with those people, put these details down, which should mean that you can easily trace them or find them in case that account is used for something that is fraudulent. How come all of this can't still work? We still require them to now go again and do a CAC registration when it's not a business name that they are running or anything of that nature.
Well, if we look at it from the last part of your comment, if you've given me POS to do a business, then the business is actually being run. I mean, let's
no, but that's the point. It's a POS that belongs to a parent. It's almost like, okay, let's say a bank A gives me their POS. That property belongs to bank A. I'm technically representing bank A, working with that machine. It's not like I collected the machine for bank A and then I came and
bank A has given me a tool to carry out a business. I go to bank A and I say, I want to do this business. Give me a tool to do it. So I'm already running a business, irrespective of who gave me the terminal. In fact, the way it is right now is that I can collect multiple terminals from multiple organizations. I'm not restricted to one. I could take multiple ones. Of course, there was a final part of it that I was coming to that you will also find interesting. And what I also see again, outside the issue of the security and being able to track these people, is that there is that issue of revenue generation as well. And in revenue generation, I mean, registering a business name is really something that you can do in a day, maximum 2 days, without even going to something that you can do online. But of course, what is being done again is that they are tracking these people to be able to tax them.
Oh, I think then now this makes more sense. If it's for the taxation purposes, a lot of people might look at it.
That is part of it. That is part of it. And in fact, I would say that it probably constitutes the major part of it. But then, in registering as well, along with other things that have suddenly started coming in place, it helps to be able to track and trace. So, yes, NIN. So recently, NIN was not a requirement to have a POS. I could walk to a fintech and collect a POS. All the required was my phone number, like you said, and I can dump anytime. So all these things, there are a lot of security-related things. Are they being addressed appropriately? Probably not. But then we take it a step at a time.
Let's open the phone lines now. 0817-923-0002, 0817-923-0003, 0817-923-0007. Any of these numbers you can call to participate. 0817-923-0002, 0817-923-0003 and 0817-923-0007. This one says wicked government policy. Emmanuel Nobato Eyo Peter said it's banks. All the cyber attacks on user accounts come from within the banks. The Frankest says this government is only out to exploit Nigerians. They had not occupied office, and before you knew, subsidy was gone. And also, they've removed subsidy on electricity. They are building bogus roads from Lagos to Calabar to enrich themselves. Now, they are going to tax the overtaxed citizens for cybercrime levy. This is not how a government is run. Thank God Ability says, imagine bank charging me for monthly maintenance of my ATM card that is in my wallet. Well, thank God if you follow the conversation, you possibly would have heard my guest explain better what the card maintenance charge is about. All these unnecessary exploitations going on in the country calls for concern. Now, to go they dig ground, bury my money, which is possibly the question I would ask last to get your response on. Someone says, this is Teacher Grace. Okay, if you mean my bank, I don't want to mention the name, will not do transfer to other banks if you request. Is that correct? And you cannot get cash more than 10,000 naira. Mr. Soji, I'm sure you heard this one.
Yes, I did.
Okay, we'll get your response. The numbers to call is still 0817-923-0002, 0817-923-0003. This one says the POS and fintechs must be continually scrutinized because I was defrauded of 800k through that medium according to my bank. I went for that money for more than a year, even to the police, FCC and CBN, but nothing came out. And this is another thing, reconciling a transaction from a POS operator and a bank. Maybe I go do a transaction from a POS operator and something happens, the network issues and all of these things that happen, and then the money, I might be debited, but the money did not get to where it's going to, and etc., etc. It is usually very difficult when you go to the bank. The bank will tell you, was it a POS? Say yes. Say, if it's POS, it's difficult to, there's nothing we can do. And you begin to hear those kind of comments. And I'm saying, I thought it's one financial system being run. Why do we have these problems? You would respond to that, but let's take about 2-3 calls first. Emeka from Rumukuta, quickly talk to us. What's your question?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I've followed your guest in this program, and thank God for the explanation. But I have a challenge. Now, I have an ATM. I have a bank account which I do not have ATM. It expired long ago. Not just 1, 2 accounts. Let me not mention the bank. Yes, I'm being charged for maintenance. Why is that charge? Even though when I don't use ATMs in those bank accounts. Then, secondly, talking about the POS registration, just like you rightly said, I have a POS which belongs to a particular bank, and this bank calls me whenever there is no transaction. They follow me up whenever there is no transaction in a particular point of sale. Then, when there is a problem, let's assume I do a fraud with that bank, that particular this same bank or this same fintech will not trace me to know when all details are provided during registration. Don't you see that it's a activity on the government side, or should you just believe that same normal the transaction process that they are after and not the different aspect of the business? Thank you.
Thank you. Chima from Odili Road. All right, we lost the call from Chima. 0817-923-0007. I'm sure, Mr. Soji, you got that one. I just need to add a few more so you'd respond to all at once as we attempt to wrap things up. If someone has more than, okay, this person says, to your guest in the studio, if someone has more than one POS, will the person register all differently, or will he register all under the same registration name? All right, I think you're referring to the CAC registration. Ibiso says, Andrew, thank God for this topic. I'm so happy that we're not discussing about reverse politics. Grace, more grace. Have a nice weekend. Okay, thank you. Mr. Soji, this one says, good morning, presenter. It's obvious that the only good at speaking English, but never ready to behave like the English people. What is it only that your guest and the people coming up? I can't put what you're saying. What's your name? J Moore. I can't really put what you're saying together. So please, if you can send that message again, please do. Knowing the POS operator's location and knowing who cashed the money from the POS operator is the problem. How do we hold the POS operator for someone who just comes and get money and go? The transaction would have history, details now, doesn't it? It does have details you can trace. Mr. Soji, is that not correct? If a person uses a POS, aren't there details? The details of the transaction would appear. I think there's different receipts that are being issued. Can't those be traced? We'll take one call and then we wrap that up with it. Roses from Rumigbo, quickly, let's get your thoughts. Go on.
Good morning, sir. I want to ask you again question. I'm facing some challenges in my bank. I want to ask you whether the receiver used to debit the receiver, because anytime when I receive like 50,000 naira, I will see that they debit me 100 naira, and then they will not send me message. I just check my bank balance, and I will see that they already debit sometimes 150, sometimes 100 naira. But I don't know why they're debiting the receiver. Me, I'm the receiver, so I want to understand.
All right, thank you, Mr. Soji. Several. I mean, it's a barrage of questions from the messages. I took more of the messages, so let's hear your response.
Yeah, the first I think was about cash availability. In terms of cash availability, it's still a problem that the financial institutions at the CBN are grappling with. Nobody seems to have an answer to the problem, and I can tell you for free that a lot of financial institutions have resorted to sourcing cash by themselves outside the CBN through a lot of retail outlets. But we also see situations where people who work in these retail outlets find it more profitable to pass cash to POS operators, because for banks are just going to interpret cash on their behalf to credit into their account. So there's legal control that we can have over that aspect of it. And that is why, sadly, POS operators seem to be cashing out on that gap that exists today. And on the card maintenance without a valid card, that person has the right to demand a refund, because you cannot pay for what you have not received. So clearly, the person has a right to seek redress. And beyond the bank, the CBN also has a customer protection department. Yeah, their response time may be slow, but I can assure you that they do respond. And in many, many cases, banks actually penalized if they found out the banks are wanted. So any serious bank will know that if customer complains, the issue should be investigated immediately, and where redress needs to be done, the redress will be provided. Then the failed transactions on POS and the trace. Yes, every POS transaction can be traced, and that is why if you use a POS terminal for payment and it fails and you are debited, you have to go to your bank. The bank has a process of logging the dispute and ensuring that you get your money back once it is confirmed. That takes 5 days. I think it's between 5 and 7 days because of the investigations and everything that will take place. Because many times the bank also has to get to the terminal operator to confirm that transaction. But many banks, and that is why we tell people that if your transaction has failed, demand the printout of that failed transaction. Because with that printout, it makes the process shorter. Banks will refund you once they receive a copy of that failed receipt. Because that is an evidence. It is a clear evidence that transaction failed and you were not supposed to have been debited for it.
Right.
And then in the case of people who go to POS operators to draw cash and the rest of it they get, well, I believe
Mr. Soji, unfortunately, we have a commercial coming, so if you can just hold that thought, let's attend to this. We'll be back.
Step into a world where every smile is a story waiting to be told. At Timeless Images Limited, we specialize in